Hey guys, welcome to the latest episode of the 40/40 Vision podcast, the ultimate sports history pod where hindsight is 40/40. Before we get started, let's pay some bills and hear from our presenting sponsors. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 40/40 Vision podcast. I'm your host, Khaled Abdallah, and I'm joined today by a special guest, not just a friend of the podcast, but a family member of the podcast, Ashraf Dahud. What's up, man? How's it going?
How we doing? I'm going ahead and filling in the overstudy seat and giving Sam a break. We're going to talk some college sports, baby.
Yeah, man. So Ashraf is a contributor for Clutch Sports covering Stanford University. So he's a Pac-12 expert. And today's topic is about the death of the Pac-12. So if you guys aren't following the news, essentially 8 of the 12 teams from the Pac-12 have departed to other conferences, and we'll cover where they're going and what's next for them. But I want to start off, I'm going to ask you, I'm always curious about this. You are not a Stanford alumnus, so why Stanford? What is it about the university that has you cheering for them like this?
Well, growing up in the Bay Area, or even just in the state of California, we're so spoiled. We have professional sports coming out of every corner and loop for people to cheer for. And I've always had friends and family members who have had college affiliations and whatnot. And it was when I actually, I've always kind of leaned Stanford when it came to having to pick one if someone were to ask me anyway, because, just the colors and the namesake and whatnot. But it was when I went on tour and working with all these people from the Midwest and the South who bleed their college sports teams, whether they are students or not. I was put on the spot right away. I was like, hey, who's your favorite team, or who's your associate? Who do you affiliate with? And I mean, hey, back in the day, it was always Stanford. So, I stuck to my guns and, picked the guys in Cardinal. In addition to all that, though, their hospital has helped a few family members of ours, and I'll always be grateful for that.
So as good a reason as you can come up with, aside from going to the school. I mean, the Midwest is a hotbed, the South for college sports. The West Coast, yeah, but I think the professional sports dominate the landscape. I think that's going to contribute to our conversation today. So, I mean, me personally, you see me, I've got my Arizona hat. I did not go to Arizona, unlike you, but my dad did, and I was born in Tucson while my dad was at the school. So it's kind of in my bloodlines a little bit, right? But aside from that, I think I lean more Berkeley in the Cal Stanford rivalry.
Okay. All right.
I lived in Berkeley for a year, so I didn't go to school there, but I lived there while working. But in general, I'm just a Pac-12 guy, man. I generally root for the teams, if they're in the college football playoff or in the March Madness. Even if it's a quote-unquote rival, even ASU, I'll still root for them just because I like the conference.
Back the pack. That's it.
Exactly. A rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing. So the Pac-12 is one of the historic conferences in college football, or was, I should say. I guess it's still kind of around. So, I mean, what do you know about the history of it and the member schools when it got started, things like that? Anything that you want to share about the history?
Well, many people who are new to it, obviously, you only know it as the Pac-12, but obviously there was the Pac-10 and the Pac-8, and we had all of our initiating schools who, kind of compiled this and became the one super conference that we are potentially no longer going to be anymore, but who knows what will be. But again, most schools back then weren't considered blue bloods or Power Five, and now we have our group conferences that eventually grew in and joined the Pacific over here, and it's, I don't know. I can't stop thinking about how beat down the conference is. It's just hearing the name Pac-12 doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if I can call it Pac-12 anymore. It's the Pac.
Yeah, it's just the Pac.
Yeah. But I'm sorry, off track. Yeah, obviously, initiation schools, beginning of the conference, early 1900s, Pac-8, Pac-4, Pac-6, whatever it was. Obviously, as more schools gained interest, then college football and college sports gained more ground. and they saw the success coming out of certain institutions. The conference grew, and the affiliation got bigger, and money was coming in. Obviously, it's not the same anymore, or it's even more of that now, but to a different extent. But here we are.
Hmm. Yeah, the conference started more than 100 years ago as the Pacific Coast Conference, and then, like you said, it was the Pac-4, then the Pac-8, and then became the Pac-10 in like the late 70s, and that's what it was most known for until the last few
Hmm.
years. And it was called the Conference of Champions. Do you want to tell
That's
us
right.
why? Why was it called the Conference of
Conference.
Champions?
Well, I mean, hey, for starters, man, Stanford University is the leading institution slash university slash whatever you want to call it in NCAA championships in collegiate sports, men's, women's, you name it. Stanford leads the entire nation. A lot of people forget this, but in the last Olympics, if Stanford University was competing as a country, they would have taken third with just the medals and honors their student athletes or alumnus received during the Olympics. Stanford is the golden standard. Again, a lot of people don't see that because they only look at football, basketball, and that's it. Uh, but I mean, hey, man, we've made 3 Omaha trips the last few years for men's baseball. Our women's basketball team won a national championship a few years ago. The men were men's football was dominant in the 2010s, and obviously everything else is like, if it's not Stanford, then it's no one else. Golf, row,
Hmm.
uh, again, lacrosse, frisbee, you name it. It's always Stanford. USC, honorable mention, not too far behind. USC is also right
Sure.
up there in triple digits when it comes to NCAA collegiate championships. But again,
UCLA too,
uh,
right? They've won at least 100,
yeah, I think UCLA
right?
broke the triple digit mark not too long ago. It was usually just Stanford and USC kind of up there. And I don't know. Say what you want. My opinion, USC, the USC is always going to be the Southern California school with the Trojan mascot, not the
Hmm.
Gamecocks over in South Carolina. That is
Yeah.
SC or the Cox or whatever you want to call them. That's South Carolina. USC will always be the Trojans.
Yeah, that's not even a conversation. But yeah, I mean, Stanford is elite at a ton of other sports. I think women's soccer as well. They've
Mm-hmm.
got a couple athletes on the U.S. women's national team. So it's not just
Mm-hmm.
football and not just basketball. So I guess the question is for the public. I mean, most people really only care about football and basketball, mostly football. When was the last time the Pac-12 was really relevant in the world of college football?
And that for me, anytime someone wants to say that is beyond, it's beyond me because just last year, they were relevant. You know, they found their coach, from Oklahoma. They got their guy. I'm not even gonna say his name because I don't want. I can't polish USC too much, man. I gotta find a happy medium. Um, but they brought their guy over from Oklahoma. He went in and changed the program completely. He brought in these wide receivers. He brought in these running backs. He brought his guy over himself and Caleb Williams. They set the world on fire. Give them another year or two like this, they're going to be in that playoff picture, man. They weren't too far out this year.
Mhm.
They're going to be
Yeah,
right
that's
there.
true.
But
They were. Mhm.
sorry, same thing with UCLA. But I mean, if we want to talk about, like outside of the last, year or two, definitely, like I said, in the 2010s, you had the Stanford team right there, Washington, Oregon. The days of Marcus Mariota, the days of it was Kevin Hogan was throwing the ball to Dalton Schultz and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and Simi Fehoko, who are all NFL players these days. Austin Hooper. Conrad Ukaprina, who I wish kept on playing football, but the man kicked a 60-yarder to send Notre Dame home in 2015 or 16. There were some real ballers back then. Washington, Oregon, Stanford, USC, UCLA, everyone had fight in them. Even like little
Mhm.
guys like Oregon State and Arizona State. Arizona, God bless them. There, I think they're finally on the butt end of that transition. So I think they're finally making their way back over there. But and Utah, my God, Utah has been slept on forever. Like they've always been a performing football school. Like I
Mhm.
mean, they may not have made like national championships, but I'm pretty sure they've had somewhere between 4 to 6 top 25 final finishes in the Associated Press end of season poll. Like they're up there, man.
Yeah, and I think
They're solid.
yeah, I mean, I think the college football playoff I think has kind of dimmed some of the shine from the Pac-12
Mhm.
because they really make it just about those four teams. It's not about the Rose Bowl like it used to be or some of these other lesser bowls. They don't get as much
That's right.
shine at all. And I mean,
Hmm.
when it comes to the CFP, the last title appearance was 2015 when I think
Hmm.
they was it Oregon lost to Auburn, and then
Yeah.
UW made it in 2016, but they lost to Alabama in the first round. So they've been in the mix in the college football playoff, but
Hmm.
aside from those 2 years, they've really been, like you said, they're there, they're relevant, but they're not dominating the headlines the way that like the SEC or the ACC with Clemson are. So I think
Right.
maybe that's part of it. But in terms of the Final Four, I mean, they were just there a couple years ago. UCLA made it in 21, so they're still relevant when it comes to basketball, at least, or not even just relevant, but
Hmm.
one of the better teams when it comes to basketball. But do people only care about football? Is that the problem?
I think it is one of the biggest issues. But before we even jump into that, I want to just rewind a little bit. Oregon, God bless them, was so good back then. But let's be honest, they were not winning that game against Ohio State in the national championship. Man, that Urban Meyer, Ezekiel Elliott, Joey Bosa team was not going anywhere. Those guys were running through people left and right. And Oregon, for some reason, but maybe this goes back and it kind of connects our little bridge here. Oregon was favored to win that game by 7. Mariota, Eric Armstead, DeForest Buckner. That team, the team had some wheels to them. They were favored to win by 7, and maybe people saw that because again, Pac-12 team ran through the entire North and South parts of the conference, which are no longer viable anymore. There's no more North and South. Um, but again, ran through everybody in their path, but then ran into a brick wall Ohio State team and got sat down real quick. And in football, yeah, I think a lot of it just has to do with favoritism within the sport, and a lot of people do primarily focus on just football. Because, like I said, like I mean, let's be honest. You and I can go on Twitter now, and we can find like a thread about national championships and what schools have produced what sort of productivity. Obviously, the answer is Stanford. But you're gonna find a bunch of trolls saying those aren't real sports, those aren't this, those don't count. Like, okay, buddy, like these people can run circles around us, whether they're swinging a golf club, throwing a discus, throwing a shot put, whatever it might be. But because football is, it's the associated vibe, the energy, the party, the sport. It's what the entire school goes to do and have fun with because it's televised on a Saturday where you don't have any class. You can go do whatever you want, or you're cutting class and not studying, whatever it may be. It's been like the national like pastime, and I know it's odd to say because baseball, Major League Baseball, is America's pastime, right? But college football is the current pastime for the youth, or at least for the everyday American student. That's what they're going to do. That's what they're really digging into, and of course, having ESPN there every Saturday, especially if they pick your school, buddy, you're not staying in to sleep. You're gonna go out there and you're gonna start partying like it's what it was ever say 1999. And even going back to last year when Tennessee made the playoffs, their coach, Big Orange Josh Heupel, was telling students to get out there and start drinking at 8 9 a.m. He wanted them to be ready to rock. He wanted them to fight and be ready to rush the field when they won. Hey, they did. They did. They especially after beating Alabama. But yeah, football is, I guess, my excited reaction there kind of speaks for itself. And don't get me wrong, I love all of my Stanford sports, and we'll watch multiple sports, even when it comes to going to Omaha again and not winning a single game. But love my trees. Football, yeah, football's become the focus. It's always been the focus for college sports, and uh, until there's another outlet or another big boom that causes this, then that's it. It's football, man.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, football is king. They drive the majority of the revenue for the schools, for the athletic programs. They're, of course, the drivers behind the media rights deals that these conferences are getting, which I think is a good segue to the next conversation is how did we get here? How did the media rights deals and all that lead to this point? And I guess the question is like, from what I've read, there was a chance to align with the Big 12 a few years ago, but that fell
Yep.
through. And then there was a massive TV contract that the Pac-12 signed that ended up being a negative because they signed
Horrible.
too long of a contract. But yeah, so how did we get here, and how did the TV rights drive us to this point?
So the first time they got that Big 12 offer, obviously they wanted the Big 12. The Big 12 to stand on their own legs. They're very aware of that, but they wanted to add some shine. They wanted to add some polish to their title. Change the sign, get rid of the neon lights, and make it modern. Bring in the LA schools or whoever it might have been back then that they were planning to bring on down. In addition to that, the Pac-12 didn't need that because we stood tall, we stood proud, we were still strong brass. We had all 6 to 8 football teams making top 25s every week, whether it was in the coaches poll or the AP poll. We were finishing strong, but like you mentioned, after a failed TV deal that took too long and failing to reconstruct another viable deal to succeed that, it just became about money hungry and of course, obviously, there wasn't enough attention because what does everyone always complain about too? It's the lack of attention or the lack of notoriety the Pac-12 gets, right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
because it's similar to the NBA, right? All these guys are in bed by the time the Golden State Warriors are still playing basketball, right? People can't vote Draymond Green for Defensive Player of the Year or Defensive All First Team because they were in bed because Giannis finished playing 2 hours
Mm-hmm.
ago.
Just real quick, not to
So,
cut you off, but I mean, I lived on the East Coast for a long time, and one of my favorite things was staying up late on a Saturday night, and it would be 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm just kicking off the third quarter of Cal Stanford or Arizona Washington
yeah,
State,
man.
and then
Yeah,
it's even better if they're playing in Hawaii or something. Then I'm up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning
yeah.
watching these games. So I get it. It's a very different fan experience, but please continue.
No, a special shout out and prayers to those in Maui right now. Speaking of Hawaii, by the way, really hope if we have anyone listening here who knows anyone over there, uh, speedy recovery and many blessings to you and yours.
For sure, for sure.
Stanford's actually scheduled to play Hawaii at Hawaii as I believe our season opener this year too. So if that affects us in any way, obviously, I know the university would have no problem bringing the school over to Palo Alto, no problem. But to get back to where we were, yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, obviously, we love that, right? We love staying up late and watching our games. But then you see like things that are almost embarrassing. That they call it Pac-12 after dark, and it's like, buddy, it's 8 o'clock. What do you mean after dark? But the rest of the nation is sleeping because no one wants to watch this game. They're trying to make it. They're trying to make add some relevancy to it, but no one wants to watch it. And then on top of that, and this is the real, I think, a lot of people will agree or disagree with me. I think it's because, and again, this goes back to my point, we as Californians are spoiled, right? We have sports coming out of everywhere. NIL gets passed. Everyone, hey, it's time to get paid, right? Where's the money for college athletes? In the Midwest, in the South, in the East, in the SEC, in the Big 12, in the Big 10, and the ACC. The Pac 12 has not been able to provide enough of a financial showcase or financial deals to make any of this happen. And of course, you as a very big football or soccer fan, the money for all thing really kind of, I think, dragged everyone down, kind of sunk their nails into like the distaste of wanting to get out of this. I mean, La Liga, right? La Liga has the same thing.
You're referring to the revenue share?
Yes, the revenue. Thank you. The revenue share is just another reason why. So it's NIL for us, revenue share for like specific like the Pac-12. But these are just other reasons why the other reasons why crumbling or why water started to sprout through the cracks. There wasn't enough money, coming out of the Pac-12. No, not enough people paying attention to West Coast sports or West Coast college sports at the very least. And then revenue sharing, like Real Madrid and Barcelona make a bajillion dollars a season, but then have to give it a fair amount to Elche and Getafe and who no one goes to Rayo Vallecano. No one's gonna play. No one's watching those guys, man. Like imagine if the same thing happened in England and Chelsea had to give half their share to Luton Town, who just got here for the first time.
The
It's
riots.
bonkers. It's bonkers. Like, and for me, I'm a realist. Stanford these days isn't putting up a crowd. If it's not Cal, Stanford, Cal, USC, or Stanford, Notre Dame. Sorry, I said Cal, USC. I meant Stanford, Cal, Stanford, USC, Stanford, Notre Dame. But we're not putting up crowds. But you go to the Coliseum down here in LA, they're still filling up the bowl. They're still doing it. Oregon still fills up their crowds. Washington, people pick a boat to their games to get into their stadium. I honestly think it's a lot of it has to do with that too. There's just the institutions or teams or universities aren't getting the fair share that they believe that they deserve. Student athletes and those who support student athletes aren't getting enough exposure, deals, finances, or however supplemental opportunities they could be getting elsewhere outside of California. And of course, our clown, head of conferences or whoever's the financial or marketing guys up there, not being able to secure a succeeding deal after the one that just broke. I mean, you can't not find something or put something even better in its place after you've already, shat the bed for how many years now. So,
I
and they
mean, and
wanted
what do you think has
CTE to be the
contributed
replacement.
to? Oh yeah, that's not happening. I mean,
That
what
was
do you think has
terrible.
been like the driving force behind some of the decrease in attention on the Pac-12? Because we lived through a golden era, right? We had the early 2000s USC teams, and then the Marcus Mariota teams in Oregon, Andrew Luck, even the Justin
Hmm.
Herbert teams in Oregon, not quite as dominant as those, but we lived through that golden era. So what do you think has contributed to the decrease in attention? Because it used to be the most popular league, if I'm not
Oh
mistaken, the
yeah.
most popular
Oh
conference.
yeah. Oh yeah. Of course. Um, well, again, I think going back to it, and I don't want the risk to sound like a broken record, but NIL has to do with it. Stanford is one of those schools that is to this day still fighting against the belief of or value of giving students like again a surplus of an NIL deal. Um, and a lot of these people again they want recognition, especially if the end goal is to make the NFL and get to the draft and uh, find scouts who are going to see you. They want to get seen earlier in the day. They're tired of being told that their teams or their squads can't fight against real football teams. Like, yeah, man, because playing Vanderbilt's going to really change the way that we all play college football here on the West Coast. No disrespect to Vanderbilt fans, but um, again, a lot of it has to do with that. It's attention, it's notoriety, it's NIL, it's all money. It's honestly all money. Now that money is a factor, that's really what it is. You didn't see the Pac-12 teams trying to jump ship at such a quick pace when money wasn't a factor because the conference was able to stand on its own. But now that the conference has shown a lack of confidence and trust within the teams that they're supposed to be the carrying umbrella for, I mean, hey, I don't blame them half the time. I would probably jump ship too.
So I mean, we were living through a golden age of the Pac-10, Pac-12, whatever it is in the
Hmm.
2000s with the USC teams, Oregon teams.
Yeah.
So what do you think has driven the decrease in attention to the conference as a whole in the past few years?
Well, obviously money, definitely money. If we're gonna go ahead and just put one thing on the board right away, I think level of competition also has to another driving factor in that as well. There's a reason why, and again, a lot of people hate this, but there's a reason why we see Ohio State, Michigan, Clemson, and Alabama in the Final Four every year. They're the most dominant programs out there. They're getting some of the best recruits out there. They're where all the eyes are. And where are all four of those teams? In the Midwest and the South. Literally 2 and 2. Well, the states next to each other as well. And if you can't get the same attention that these same four teams are getting in their conferences, no one's looking over West. No one's paying attention. And then if you're not getting, the financial support or opportunity that these same guys are getting, that's where it goes down. That's where everyone else starts to suffer. People start losing confidence in their conference. Obviously staff starts to go away. Players are disencouraged to start signing with, Pac-12 institutions or commit rather to those institutions and teams and go elsewhere. There's a lot of people who would rather go play, I'm trying to think of someone, a good example. There's a lot of people who would rather go play for Nebraska, which sells out their stadium every single Saturday and is noticed and gets seen every week because they play in the conference that they do. And again, no disrespect to Nebraska. I think their fans are the salt of the earth, and I love talking to them because they're so diehard about their sports teams, and there's no professional sports in Nebraska. So those people are all about their Cornhuskers. But there are a lot of players and student athletes who would rather go commit and play for Nebraska and play in that conference because they're going to get seen rather than go commit and play for Utah, for example, or UCLA, just because it's on the West Coast, even though they might have slightly better records than like a Nebraska or a Vanderbilt or whoever it might be. That's where the traffic's moving.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, I think it's a reflection of the new reality in college sports. I think on the West Coast, there's a lot of alternatives. There's a lot of professional sports, a lot of things that you can do instead of going to a Stanford or Cal game. Even UCLA. I mean, USC is the flagship team or university, but I think even UCLA suffers from this as well. I mean, I think this is a product of it's just the end of amateurism in sports, in college sports. I mean, am I crazy that it's just like there's NIL? I mean, which is all good with me. I don't have any issues with it. So, I mean, is that a crazy assumption that this is because it's the end of amateur sports, basically, as we know?
I think that's territorial. I think it depends on where you are, where you're watching and supporting from. Again, I mean, hey, I might as well complete the Trinity here, saying California, it's not going to bother us much more than it will yesterday or tomorrow for most of our people here. So other places out like Nebraska, Oklahoma, Virginia, where their teams are the bread and butter of their Saturdays and Sundays or whatever day that their college teams play. All sports, not just football. They're going to be the ones that continue driving the ship or riding the ship rather in the direction I think of revival rather than death. Of amateur sports. But yeah, man. I guess again, I think it all just goes back to being territorial. Depends on where you are, what your fan bases are like, and like I said when we first hopped on this call. I went to my touring job where its home base was in Montana, and I saw 60 people there all wearing college sweaters, and I said, "Oh my God, I need to order a Stanford sweater now," because I was called out left and right. Who do you associate with? Who do you affiliate with? Buddy, I had to go ahead and rock my trees hard, man.
Yeah, and speaking of association, I mean, I think some of the rivalries are going to stick together. We're going to see, UCLA and USC are together, Arizona, ASU, but I think some of the kind of cross-state rivalries that we used to see are going to go away. Stanford, USC, even Cal, USC used to be a big game. So I mean, what's next for the four teams that are left behind? So just to remind everybody, UCLA, USC, Oregon, and Washington are at the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
Arizona, ASU, Utah, and Colorado are with the Big 12. And that leaves Cal, Stanford, Oregon State, and Washington State in the Pac-4, I guess we'll
I
call it
guess,
now.
yeah.
So, what do these teams do? Do they reach out to Boise State, to UC Davis, to, I don't know. I'm just
Right.
throwing out
No,
names
so
of schools out here on the West Coast.
I
So what do they do?
I've discussed this with a few people already. There's some great accounts, by the way, on Twitter. The message board geniuses is awesome. Fight on Rusty is a USC account, and a lot of my other West Coast sports guys out there. Great people out there. Um, well, we've had these conversations, and we've talked about it too. And that first option by adding a San Diego State, one or both of the Nevadas, Boise State, Hawaii, scooping up a lot of these Group of Five schools, which again on paper looks like a good idea, but it would be taking away from those conferences themselves, and they would be stuck with whatever they would have to scrape up for. And in addition to that, and again, it hurts to even say, but BYU is independent right now, but they're a school that attracts a lot of attention, and it could be a school to go ahead and could further contribute to our conference. In addition to
Mm-hmm.
that, like I said, hey, Stanford has the financial
Yeah.
stability to go independent on their own if they wanted to as well. It's definitely an option, and there's other great
Yeah.
accounts like Stanford Rivals, Channel Tree Sports, uh, who can speak on this and really kind of tell you what's going on. Even the Stanford Tree, got such a great follow on Twitter, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Even talks about like realigning the conference or going independent, and we have our options at this point. But I feel like we need to do something soon because we can't just sit here with these other three and rely on our commissioners to make something happen, because obviously they are a big reason as to why we are where we currently are
Mm-hmm.
sitting.
Yeah. I mean, and maybe there's the possibility of joining the Mountain West temporarily. I mean, it works out geographically. They already have 12 schools, so adding another four is not crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, maybe it's a potential option. But the point that you brought about Stanford going independent, I think I was Bill Simmons. I think he mentioned it, and I think it would be an ideal situation for them, because maybe they're in that Notre Dame position where they can negotiate their own TV deals. I think they might have that same pull, at least on the West Coast, where they can do that. But I think it would just be kind of sad that if they, after all this,
Mm-hmm.
this historic run in the Pac-10, Pac-12, whatever, and they all of a sudden go independent, and it's just, I wonder what that would do to the program and
Yeah,
everything else
it
that's
would hurt,
associated with it. What do you
obviously
think?
the pride and kind of, the brass that we've collected in the past, of our program, of our pristine name there. Uh, on top of that, I think it would also like we've built such a amazing new class that's just committed, and Troy Taylor and his crew have done a great job of already putting us in the right direction of rebuilding, and I think that would be such a bummer in my opinion. Obviously, again, I'd love to prove wrong, because whatever benefits my boys is going to be the best, but I I think that would hurt if we were grouped into the Mountain West with those group of five guys, and we start winning all these games, but we can't make the Associated Press top 25 to save our lives because they're beating group of five schools. I mean, yeah, there's a big part of me would be like, yeah, baby, bowl game, here we come, but. But it obviously, that's, we want to aim for bigger. We want to aim for better. We have one more year with these other 11 guys before things start to go ahead and burn down. I also, side note, I love Coach Prime. I think he's fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
He's great energy. Loved him as a player. Like him as a coach. I don't think they're going to win these 8 games that everyone says they're going to go out there and win, man. They were
Yeah,
they were.
they won like 3 games last
I think
year.
they were either tied with us or they were worse than us last year, man. So I don't think so. I don't think they're winning 8 games this year, 7, 8 games that everyone says they're going to go win. But as for these right, as for these rivalry games you mentioned, Obviously, a lot of the in-state ones will continue, like the Oregon versus Oregon State, Washington State, et cetera, et cetera. A Cal Stanford one might continue regardless of conference because the financial benefit of something like that between the two. And of course, again, it's always kind of been like a big brother, little brother thing. But and of course, these guys aren't going to miss an opportunity to make a solid dollar here. So maybe they sacrifice a different game,
Yeah,
or
for sure.
or I don't know, maybe they use Cal as their cupcake game or something, the season opener.
Yeah, I mean that's the current
Good.
state of Cal football, so I'm not even offended. So big picture, we talked about the Pac-12. The Pac-12 is ending, as you mentioned. This is the last year of it as we know it, with all these changes happening. I mean, in general, what do you think is next for college sports? Is it these regional super conferences? Is it just one or two huge conferences with these bigger schools? In the next 5 years, how do you see things playing out?
Well, I think the way it already is now, with some of these conferences getting bigger, because Big Ten and Big 12 are no longer 10 and 12, right? I think we already need to start looking. I think and this is such a
Yeah.
like a broken topic, but I think we need to start looking at realignment within the playoff system again. I like bowl games. Don't get me wrong. I like it when my team can win 6, 7 games and go out there and win the Foster Farms Bowl, or whatever it may be. I like that. You puts another piece of silverware inside of our china cabinet. Um, but when it comes to those other teams, like there's got to be a better way to start going about it now, because you're gonna have 4 to 5 powerhouses in some of these conferences, and having one of them miss out on the playoffs. They're gonna win 9. They're gonna win 9 to 12 games and potentially miss the playoffs just because someone else went undefeated or only lost 1 or 2 games. No, man, we really gotta look into some of that stuff, and start rearranging the cards here. But I think the future of college sports I think it's still on a solid enough trajectory. It's where when the greed kicks in is where we got to start watching out for ourselves, because with a lot of these people are again,
Yeah.
we're gonna need college athletes, collegiate athletes, student athletes, for many, many years to come, if we're gonna go ahead and keep building these professional sports teams and Olympians, et cetera, et cetera. But you got to keep them happy, and if you want to make money off of them, NCAA, like you usually do,
Mhm.
you got to keep the fans happy.
For sure. And I think that the greed is what's driving all this, and it's all the billions with a B that are driving these changes and these realignments, all these TV deals and streaming rights and all that stuff. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see what comes in the next few years with the TV rights and everything else. But I'm rooting for at least some of these rivalries to stay together. Obviously, if it'd be great if the Pac-10 or Pac-8 or whatever existed in some form, but at least we have the past 100 years of history and memories to lean on. So thanks for your time today, Ashraf, man. Where can we follow you? Where can we find your expert opinion on Stanford and the Pac-12 as currently constructed?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Clutch Stanford. If you wanna talk to me about finding other pages that can cover other conferences and other teams, I know a lot of great people that can do that. In addition to Khaled over here, of course. Um, let's talk. Let's chat. Let's watch some football, baseball, basketball, soccer, football, and gymnastics. You name it. As of now, and at the start of this season, going into the next year, we are still the Conference of Champions.
Absolutely. There you go. Well, thank you guys again for listening. Make sure to follow us, leave us a review wherever you're listening to this podcast. Make sure to follow us on all the major social media platforms at 4040 Vision Pod. We're doing some cool stuff on TikTok and YouTube especially, so make sure to subscribe and follow us there. And we're going to be following this story. We're going to be following the college sports trajectory for the next few years. So strap in and let's go on this journey together. Thanks, everybody.